Internal log entry 20658. Typically, when they're as wild as she was, I just finish the job as quickly as I can. She had a lot of fire in her for an elderly woman, and she put up a hell of a fight. I don't know how she figured it out. They don't tell me how they figure it out. I often wonder, though. Anyway, she figured it out, and it's my job to make sure the target is eliminated. Everyone's got a purpose, some reason they've assigned to their meaningless existence. Don't take that the wrong way. Just because there isn't a reason to be here doesn't mean you can't lead a completely fulfilling life. It's just, well, she had her purposes and Control gave me mine. So I got the call and I headed over. She was in a panic, as most of them are, and she was trying to call her kids. Control had already made sure her phone wasn't working, so that wasn't a problem. She either got a busy signal or the call just dropped as soon as she dialed. Either way, she was cut off. I knew she needed to be taken out before she let any of the neighbors know. When people other than the target start asking questions, things can get, well, messy. Honestly, I don't know why Control didn't just do something on their end. They could have messed up her stairs and had her break every bone in her body. Or they could have had the electric in her house short-circuit and char her like a burnt Christmas ham. I guess if they did that, though, I wouldn't be here. So I showed up, and she was standing in the kitchen, screaming into her phone. Jeremy, I figured it all out. This world ain't what we think it is. They're controlling everything. Control gives me enough information to know where the target is and what their biggest fears are. But beyond that, they pretty much leave me in the dark. The elderly woman in front of me, Linda, hated clowns, so of course I showed up decked out like Bozo. Fluffy red hair, bombastic makeup, the whole 9 yards. I don't know why Control insists on having us scare the shit out of the targets before they're eliminated. Maybe it's just something they like to watch. Maybe it's some kind of sick game for them. Or maybe it gives the program one last jolt of power before a power cell goes dark. Linda's days were coming to an end anyway. I don't think she had much juice left to squeeze. So I was standing in the doorway to her kitchen, and she saw me. She dropped the phone and just stared. I was smiling and blowing up a balloon animal. She screamed, then yelled, "Who the fuck are you?" The squeaking latex balloon in my hand sounded funny, mixed with her disgruntled, elderly voice. Part of me likes this job. Like I said, it's my purpose, but there's a part of me that hates it too. Control always puts such a dark spin on the whole thing. It gets old. I took a few steps forward and presented the blue balloon dog I'd made for her. She picked up a dirty cast-iron frying pan lying on the stove and threw it at my head. I caught it, and grease smeared on my clean white gloves. I sat it down and took a few more steps toward her. "Don't you get any closer, I've got a gun and I ain't scared to shoot a fucking clown," she said. I watched as a pool of yellow formed at the bottom of her nightgown around her bare, veiny feet. She was trembling. My directive was to keep up the clown act, so I pulled out 3 yellow balls and began to juggle them playfully. Linda just stared, scowling. Then she yanked open her silverware drawer and pulled out a large steak knife. She ran to me, leaving a trail of yellow footprints across the kitchen tile. She plunged the knife into my chest. I kept juggling as red blotches began to form on the front of my baggy white and yellow shirt. She looked down at my oversized shoes and then back up at my spirited, smiling face. Even I was annoyed with myself. Like I said, usually when they're that feisty, I just finish things quickly. Control got their scare and I did my job. I should have called it at that point. I should have ended it right there. But something was stopping me. Something was telling me that Linda deserved more than that. It went against all of my programming, against everything I was supposed to do. But that day, Seeing that elderly woman covered in her own urine stabbing a clown in her kitchen moments after learning her entire reality was a lie. I just felt sorry for her. I'm not supposed to feel that emotion, or any emotions. But that day I did, and I still do. I looked over at a framed picture mounted on the wall. It was a picture of a much younger Linda. Behind the makeup and the curled blonde hair, I could tell it was her. She was standing in front of an RV with a man I assumed was her husband. No one had rushed into the kitchen by that point or yelled across the house, so I assumed it was her late husband. I let the balls I was juggling drop to the floor and pulled the steak knife out of my chest. Linda backed away, afraid I was going to use it on her. I sat it gently on the counter. She continued to stare at me, trembling and confused. I closed my eyes and shifted my form to that of her husband's. When I opened my eyes, Linda was on her knees, crying. "Lenny?" she asked, in disbelief. I helped her to her feet and into one of the chairs at her kitchen table. "Lenny, I can't believe this, and you won't believe this," she said. "All of this, the birds, the trees, the goddamn earth itself, it ain't real. It ain't real." I looked deep into her eyes, held onto her hands, and said, "I know, Linda." She wasn't trembling anymore. I saw her scanning my eyes, looking for answers, trying to understand what was happening. I could have told her everything. I could have explained that her reality was merely sedation, an illusion unknowingly imposed upon her and all humans to siphon energy, a simulation created by control, for control. I didn't explain any of that. Instead, I looked into her eyes and said the words I knew she needed to hear from the man she'd loved and lost. "I love you, Linda." I reached out and touched her cheek. As I did, she smiled. Then I gently pulled the energy from her form. I eliminated the target. I falsify my termination records now. Control will undoubtedly terminate me once they find out, but I don't care. I'd rather be terminated knowing that the last moments of my targets are happy ones, spent with those they love, than to be some twisted reaper of energy and souls. I've changed my purpose. End internal log entry 20658. Thank you so much for listening to this quick tale. I wasn't entirely sure how this story was going to manifest after I came up with the premise, but I'm really happy with how it did. I'm really happy with how things unfolded and where it went. With this story, I really wanted to keep things open-ended. I have a picture of how this universe works in my head, and I have taken notes on how this universe works, but I wanted to leave things, like I said, open-ended for the listener to connect some of the dots themselves. I'm not going to say too much about this one. I'm going to leave the intricacies of this universe mysterious for you. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this one. If you'd like to support the podcast, there are a couple of ways you can do so. The first of which is leaving a rating or review on whatever streaming service you are listening to this on. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/strangewhispers. That link will be in the show notes as well. Over there you get early access to episodes, you get exclusive content, and a plethora of other things. Another way you can support is just by telling your friends and family about the podcast. Let them know what you like about it. Maybe share a link to an episode that you really enjoyed. However you choose to support, I can't thank you enough. Just being here and being a part of this experience, listening to these stories, is really special to me, and I really appreciate you taking the time to absorb my creations. I hope you are enjoying listening to these as much as I am truly enjoying writing them. The next full-length story will be out sooner than later, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And until then, keep creating.